does the learner. And so there's no kind of equality in the relationship where I'm actually there supporting and helping to build their self-esteem, because I'm the one with the big stick saying you've done it right, you've done it wrong, and they're the one coming to me with their bowl saying, can I have some marks please? And I didn't feel that dynamic in the relationship was particularly healthy. So I abandoned the driving test and went for a rather different model, and that's using sprints as a mechanism of assessment. The idea of sprints, as I've said earlier, is stolen from agile software development. It's something that's used in industry. One of the ideas that came from this table here, which I think is really important, is the idea of borrowing teaching practice from industry and the real world, and that's an effective mechanism for motivating students. So if we're teaching somebody to be a programmer, let's find programming problems similar to what they do in real life. And that's kind of the inspiration behind it. So we're drawing from industrial practice and building the assessment practice around it. So students work collaboratively in teams. They help each other, because sometimes what they can say to each other is much more effective than anything I can say to them, often because of the power relationship that exists there. Students, in my experience, don't like getting group marks, because what happens is a group of 5 students get 70%, one of them has never been there all year, so they say that's not fair, why should they get a mark? So we have to put some way of moderating and dealing with that unfairness in group work. I prefer individual assessment, which is where these 5-minute meetings come in, because I can see who is turning up for the assessment, who is doing any work, and I get a sense of the continuation, the story of their work over the year by having regular feedback and meetings with the students. Students undertake subsections of an assessment typically over 2 weeks. In agile development, a sprint typically goes from 2 to 4 weeks. On the first year and second year, I'm running sprints of 2 weeks. On the final year, I'm running sprints of 4 weeks, because I think they're a bit more mature and a bit more knowledgeable and skilled, and they can cope with the longer sprints. It also allows me to have a proper conversation. If you're doing 20 students, it works out about 5 minutes a fortnight, or for 10 minutes every 4 weeks. So it kind of works out perfectly. And so I have a face-to-face meetings with the students. And the nice thing about these meetings is it takes out the power dynamic. I can sit there and say, right, how are you doing? And they'll say, oh, I'm really struggling with this bit. And they go, okay, that's all right. Well, that's worth 30%. You've got that completely wrong, but it doesn't matter, because you can come back later and have another go at it and improve your grade. It takes much of the sting out of the power dynamic that goes on with assessment. I can find students who have got it completely wrong and say, you need to totally change your tack with this, but it's okay, you've got time to do this, because we picked this up at the beginning of the module and not at the end of the module when the final assessment is due. Also, marks may be improved at the next meeting. Now, that doesn't go on forever. Students will clearly want to improve their marks eternally if we give them opportunities to do so. There has to be a cut-off point. And I'm quite mean with this, and I will say, if you haven't claimed all of your marks in the course of the sprint, that's it. You don't get any chance to pick up on extra marks. Yeah? Mostly, I don't think I've had a single case in 5 or 6 years of doing this where they haven't managed to get all their marks claimed during the period. So mostly they do. So this is kind of where the sprint-based model comes into. The e-grid is a spreadsheet, and it's the electronic official record of what the students have got. I'll show you a picture of it in a moment. I serve the e-grid to them online in week 1. They all have their own individual marking grid, and they can have read-only access to that file. Now clearly, if we gave them read-write access, they'd give themselves 100% and then we'd never see it again. So you don't want students filling in their own grades. So that's read-only access to students. As a tutor, I can change the thing, modify it, and let the student can see what it is they've got. Now this tightens up the feedback cycle to around 10-15 minutes. Students are doing some work, bringing it to me in a meeting, and looking at it in the 5-minute meeting, and then fixing their e-grid, putting the grade on there, and they see the whole cycle of assessment and feedback in a very, very tight time period. By the course of 2 hours, I've done 2 groups in the session, and we go through very rapidly communicating where students are up to and where they need to improve. It lists all the marking criteria in quite a lot of detail. And you can mix this with more traditional approaches to assessment feedback. On the first year, I do just this process. On the second year, I do this process mixed with an essay and a small exam. On the final year, I use this process written around normal kind of project deliverables like a report, presentation, and ongoing progress reports. Yes, it's more project kind of. So you can mix and match it with traditional approaches. The other thing for the students is they can do what-if scenarios. They can take the spreadsheet, type in the grades they haven't got yet, and from that work out where they need to focus their efforts to get the grade that they really would like to have. And the spreadsheet does all the calculations for them, so there's no risk of them completely getting it wrong when they go through that process. Here's an e-grid just to give you an idea of it. The students kind of get used to it. What I have up here is the main... Each component is listed individually. I've chopped the number, if this is the multimedia one, I've chopped these down quite a lot now to reduce the number of components. It gives percentage weighting for each component in the column here, and then they can see the grade for each component there, and then their grade overall is just that one there. And what they do is they'll read the section with a detailed discussion of what it is they're supposed to do, and then each component is broken down. In a 5-minute meeting, I might have a chat with them and say, okay, that was worth 10%, that's worth 20%, that was really good, it's worth 70%, and give them the marks. And as I type the marks in, because it's a spreadsheet, it works out all the numbers for me, so I don't have to, which I like a lot, because I've done that before. And over the weeks, they work their way through the different elements of the marking grid, and there's this continuous assessment, dialogue, adjustment and understanding where the students are and helping them go on the course of the process. And that's an important part of the dialogue, I believe, is one of the keys to building effective student feedback. So questions like clarifying conceptions. What does 100% really mean? What do they have to get to full mark on a certain component? Dialogue helps us to overcome that difference of understanding. Tailoring of learning assessment. Sometimes students, you might think, you know what, you're not getting this at all. And so you can sit down and maybe say, you know, let me just meet in my office, let's go through this just a bit more, because I can see just eyes go blank when you look at this part of the assessment. Let's just put in a bit of extra time. It helps you to pick out students. No, actually, you're not getting this, so maybe I can help you a bit more. So there's a pastoral side to it, perhaps. Comprehensible feedback. I can write 5 pages of feedback that the student doesn't understand, or I can have 5 seconds of looking at a student with a blank face and think, okay, what am I not communicating here? Let's start again and go back to the basics and let's try and talk about this. And so the dialogue again overcomes that. This timely feedback, it relates to in-task assessment. This is what they're doing now. This is what they're worried about now. They want to know how they're doing. And it's feedback after the deadline, in my view, is actually post-mortem. It's kind of useless. It's no good to anybody at that point in time. So I'm very much in the opinion that feedback should be in task assessment feedback rather than saved up right to the very end. And one of the things, now I don't. This is something that's very much true of UK, and we haven't really talked about it, but it may be true in Belarus as well. One of the problems we face in the UK, certainly for programming, and certainly for first-year undergraduate studies, is that how students are taught in school is very different to how students are taught when they come to university. Is that true in Belarus, do you think? Yes. And that's a real problem, because in our school system there's lots of continuous assessment, perhaps quite a lot of hand-holding, not much emphasis on independent learning and independent thinking. And one of the things that I believe this model does is it helps to ease some of the students in to more of a university way of approaching assessment feedback, because it takes them a little bit by the hand, but also lets them fly free a bit and say, right, you're going to do that on your own, rather than relying so much on me, the tutor. And getting into that place can be quite hard. It also helps them deal with this mismatch between what I think is good feedback and what students think is good feedback. They can be 2 very different things. And there are 3 phases here. First is preparatory guidance, telling students in advance of the feedback session the kind of things they might need to know. Then having in-task guidance. So, okay, we're now doing this. How's it going? What's going on? What are you succeeding at? What are you failing at? And then also the performance feedback, and looking back and say, okay, well, you did that last time, maybe that didn't work so well, you did really well on that. Also, some of the things that we talked a bit about, we talked about group work, we talked about teamwork in some of the earlier sessions. There were some hints of active learning, getting people to get hands-on and getting students to really involve in portfolio work. Peer assessment is also a valuable mechanism to try and build into the assessment processes. There was a suggestion of build make your own salad, that was it, yes. So the idea of getting students involved in the delivery, how the delivery is structured, how the assessment is designed, and at all levels of, I've had students write their own assignments in the past, write their own marking grids, and that can be a very effective way of getting students to engage with the overall assessment and feedback process. Some issues with this approach. Students need to feel staff are being fair. That's why I stick to the 5-minute rule. 5 minutes, no more, no less. If they finish 5 minutes, then that's fine. If they don't use 5 minutes, that's okay. But if you just spend 10 minutes with one student and 5 minutes and 20 minutes, students are going to get upset. So I have to be very rigorous with the 5-minute rule. So 5 minutes of feedback per fortnight is my golden rule. Need to get the mix right. I've learned over time that I can make the marking scheme so big, it's struggling to fit it all into the time period, or so small, I'm getting it done rather quickly. So getting that takes a bit of hit and miss and a bit of luck. The other downside of some of these more ongoing models of assessment is I have to have the idea of the whole course designed before I can really start finishing the assessment. And that actually puts me under quite a lot of pressure to be able to get everything sorted out and then do that bit. And that can be a pain. Once you crack that, it's not so bad. But getting to that stage can be a bit of a problem. There's also this anxiety, not only do students not like getting bad feedback, I can feel anxious about giving bad feedback. What do I say when the student has clearly done something really, really wrong? Over time, I've developed a language, maybe a bit of humour in there, just that could be better, just be a bit sort of nicer and kinder. I don't want students in tears or crying, that's not a good sign, so to try and be more positive in my use of language and engagement with them. Moderation can be an issue, but also what happens with the approach is it tends to moderate itself. If I give a grade to a student and give a different grade to another student who's done pretty similar work, they're soon going to come and tell me why did I give the different grade. And it forces me to engage in a fair and transparent manner so people know what they're getting and know what's going on, and I get that feedback very quickly if the students think I'm not being fair in this process. This slide is interesting because there's stuff in the research paper which I want to put this in as well. One of the metrics we have in this country is the National Student Survey. When I did this research initially, I used the National Student Survey questions to try and get a sense of, well, is this really making a difference from some of the main benchmarks that we're up against? So what I found was, this was 61 students, but I've done more stuff since then, that there did seem to be improvements in terms of the benchmarks for assessment and feedback. So we have 48 to 56, 52 to 30, right? 41 to 49, and 36 to 40. So there seemed to be a general improvement on this example of a positive view. Latterly, I've done much more work on this, and the students are very positive and very keen. So much so that my second year students, when I interviewed them as part of my focus group, recommended that I redesign my first year module and use this material there in preference to the previous work that I've been doing. That's where the driving test got abandoned. That resulted in nearly a 20% increase on the first year programming module, so I was very pleased with that. Now this year I've got to keep calm and hope it repeats itself, because I think there's definite significant evidence that the students like this mechanism since I teach, and it has definite benefits in terms of the assessment and feedback and the quality of experience that they have. Now, must it be electronic? I personally like spreadsheets because they do the maths for me, and I like to type the numbers in and see the answer. You could do it without, if you did a project module, maybe you could have regular sprint type meetings with the students and give some sort of free form feedback in there, so it might be able to work. The real key advantages of this approach is the improved dialogue. I get to know the students, I get to work with the students and have a real relationship with them. And it also places the students and what they're about at the heart of what I do, rather than what I think the students should be about. And I think that's been a very educational experience for me as a tutor. My findings suggest improved student feedback. I would say it's pretty unanimous in terms of positive feedback again, but I keep checking that every year students continue to give feedback about the feedback. Staff I've worked with tend to be quite positive about this mechanism. They find it a bit strange when they first get involved, but soon get into the flow and think, actually, this is quite nice. And I think it may go some of the way of dealing with some of this fault line between what happens in school and college and what goes on when they come into higher education. And that is me done, nearly 5 minutes off the deadline. Thank you everyone for the time.